Steve.
I'm Ryan.
I'm Hannah.
I'm Griffin.
We welcome you to Rome Alliance Church Online.
While during this time of social distancing, we can't get together in church, it's so good that we have technology and can meet online.
Join us on Sunday at 9:30 or 10:45.
We invite you to share in the hope, healing, and love of the gospel.
Hi, my name is Stephanie Carismo, and this is my husband, Aaron.
We're members of Rome Alliance Church here in Rome. We wish we could be here physically to welcome you to Sunday worship.
But unfortunately, we weren't able to, so we'd like to welcome you to online services.
Good morning. I'm Jill, and I'd like to welcome you to Church Online. We look forward to seeing everybody in person again soon. Thanks for joining us.
Welcome everybody to Rome Alliance Church. I wish we could be together face to face, but I guess this virtual greeting will have to do. I hope you enjoy our time together, and thanks for watching. Take care.
Hello everyone, I'm Carol Gadwa and I'm a member of the Rome Alliance Church. I just wanted to say how thankful and blessed I am to be able to watch our Sunday morning worship online.
Hi, we're the Boardmans.
I'm Dave.
I'm Jessica.
I'm Carly.
I'm Katie.
And welcome to Church Online.
Good morning and welcome to Church Online with Rome Alliance Church. My name is Karen and I'm excited you've joined us this morning. We invite you to take a next step with us today. Your next steps are to connect, give, text, and pray. Connect. If this is your first Sunday with us or if you recently joined us here at Rome Alliance Church, fill out our online Connect card and one of our leaders will follow up with you. Give. Take a next step with us by giving to the ministry here at Rome Alliance Church. There are 3 ways you can give: online, through the church app, or in the mail at 920 Turn Street, Rome, New York, 13440. Your giving has continued to provide us opportunities to invite others to share in the hope, healing, and love of the gospel. Look forward to next week with us as we give some updates on how your giving has made an impact. Text. So pull your phone out, or if you're on your phone already, send a text message to somebody here at Rome Alliance Church, or maybe somebody you haven't connected with in a while, and text this: "Hey, I'm checking in. How are things going?" See what dialogue takes place. Pray. Tonight at 8 p.m. is our church-wide video prayer meeting. In the description below, you'll see a link to join us on Zoom. Come and pray or just bring your presence and listen in as we seek God through prayer during these times. Our prayer service will also be streamed live on our Rome Alliance Church private Facebook page, BRAC. You can always leave your prayer requests and the group praying will lift them up. Our next steps, again, are to connect, give, text, and pray. Today, I invite you to share with us in the hope, healing, and love of the gospel.
It's amazing to see what God's doing in His church in the year 2020 in this abundantly more vision that we're going to see God do abundantly more as we lean into him, as we follow him, as we engage, as we grow. And I'm excited to share with you an interview, a conversation that Pastor Bryce had with Steve Clark at Delta Lake Bible Conference Center, and some of the amazing things that have recently taken place up there amidst the COVID-19 pandemic. I have two beads on my hand. One is gold for finances, the other is green for growth. And we're going to throw these into the beads behind me. Check out this video.
Hey, Rome Alliance Church. I'm here with Steve Clark, Director of Delta Lake Bible Conference Center, and one of our very own members and elders here. And I just wanted Steve to share with us an abundantly more story that's come out of camp and how God's been working. For those as to catch up to speed, their doors were closed till at least July 1st, and they've had a lot of tough decisions and having to cancel certain things over the summer. And so that put them in a certain position, but God's been doing abundantly more. So Steve, share with us your abundantly more story.
Yeah, sure. So we've been shut down since the second week of March, and our doors have to be closed till July 1st, which obviously takes a big chunk of retreat groups and operations and operational income out, and also as a result of some of the restrictions that are still on us as a campground. We've really made the tough decision to cancel the majority of our summer plans as well. And so that puts a real burden and strain on us as a ministry financially. And so what we've done is work through a few weeks ago, began to put in place a fundraising campaign. Mm-hmm. And we wanted to do a match. In other words, we wanted to go out and talk with friends of Delta Lake and say, hey, if you could help us pull together a certain amount of money, and we had set that at $20,000, to then we would go out to the broader audience and match that, getting us to $40,000, which at the time we believed, yes, would be unbelievably helpful, reasonable, to get to. And it would do things like keep our staff employed and not have to lay any of the full-time team off, really help secure those families and give them some assurances of during this difficult time, that paycheck was going to be there, that things like that were going to stay normal. And so the first abundantly more piece came when we began to talk to some of those people initially, and that 20,000 turned into 33,500, which there's a big difference there. We were really getting close to the total goal. And we then set 60,000 as the total. And again, the abundantly more piece was how God has continued to bless. And as of right now, we're up over $76,000.
Yeah.
So God has really moved in the hearts and lives of people. And it's just been exciting to see how, while we had set certain plans in place and targeted certain goals, that God had abundantly more in store for us. And it's just been exciting to see how people have responded to that.
Yeah, that's amazing to hear. Trying to the goal of 40,000 and then being now over 76,000. And I know Delta Lake means so much to people here at our church. And I know some people have jumped in to be a part of this, and they've helped out in some creative ways in this abundantly more story. So can you share some of those?
Yeah, and I think that's a cool take on how it's been abundantly more in finances, yes, but also in just ways that people have joined us and partnered with us.
Awesome.
So we had people in the church that used their birthday as an opportunity to encourage people or ask people to give. And I think what's cool in that is that they shared some of their story and their connection. So Delta Lake meant abundantly more in their lives. They were able to share that and encourage people to give as a way to kind of, in lieu of a birthday, really, in lieu of a birthday party or whatever. And then we had people that used their gifts and abilities to bake goods that brought people to the table by saying, hey, look, I'm going to bake this. If you want to order it, the proceeds are going to go help Delta Lake, which is struggling at this time. It's a great place. They need our help. And so we saw abundantly more by people using their abilities and their own personal testimony to encourage people to give.
Yeah, that's really cool. And so when we think of abundantly more, ultimately we think of what we receive from God, but we give as well as a part of an abundantly more story to other people. Steve, I didn't really prep you for this question, but this is where I want to kind of finish off is, what is it that, in this season, you go from 40,000 to 76,000, you see people stepping in really unique ways. What is God showing you? What's God teaching you in this season of life?
Yeah, I think one of the things that's been encouraging is you see the things that really mean a lot to people. You see them getting behind, whether it's a cause, whether it's, you know what, nurses and doctors and people on the front lines. I don't think enough of all that they go through and all that they do. And so you've really seen the things that really mean a lot to people. Their perspectives have changed. They've really said, look, this means something to me. I realize it more and more as I don't have access to it, or as I see the struggle that people have gone through, I understand more. And so just to see the way people have really kind of engaged, people have, it's almost like they've been shot out of a cannon in a way to say, look, there's something, I have more time to think about this, right? Life has been adjusted so much that I have the time to really sit and ponder, sit and process things that are going on and what is really important. Listen, you and I, we like sports. I like sports. I miss it, but there's been voids of time that I would have spent, consuming a sport of some kind that helps me, as I process that, it makes me think about, now I've been able to live without it. But there are things that I don't want to live without. There are relationships, there are connections, there are things that God has put in front of me that I want to pursue and I want to pour myself into more. So, some of that's my family. And you hate to say that, but the more time I have, the more I want to spend that time with them. And maybe this adjustment in our daily routines have given us that opportunity, and it just shows what's really important. And we've seen where Delta Lake really means something to people. They've said it in the past, and it's not that they haven't partnered with us in the past, but there's a real understanding that this is a struggle everybody's dealing with. This is a real struggle, but we want to make sure that it's there for us when we have the opportunity to go back.
Yeah, no, that's great. And I think
priority.
I think it's great. I think what you shared is the idea of what Delta means to other people, and how Delta has been a part of somebody else's abundantly more story. And I just love the idea of everybody who's given their life to Christ or been called to ministry or have had a radical life change or been baptized in the lake. And part of your abundantly more story of receiving the funds that you've received is that we get to look into the future. And we get to then in the year, 2 years from now, when we see those stories continue to happen, we can look back and see this is a pivotal, abundantly more part of Delta Lake's history moving into the future. So Steve, thanks so much for being here. Thanks for sharing your abundantly more story. And we can't wait to see what God does in it. And we can't wait to see more abundantly more stories come across our path. So thanks so much, Steve, for sharing.
Hey, thanks. Thanks for Rome Alliance.
Good morning, church. I'll be reading from Psalms 33, verses 6 through 9. The Lord merely spoke, and the heavens were created. He breathed the word, and all the stars were born. He assigned the sea its boundary, and locked the oceans in vast reservoirs. Let the whole world fear the Lord, and let everyone stand in awe of him. For when he spoke, the world began. It appeared at his command.
Over the last several weeks, we've been looking at what does it mean to be the church. Not only that, but what does it mean to respond as the church? As we continue this morning in our series, Outside Influences, I wanted us to gear our hearts to realize what it means to be the church. Let's take a look at this video as we open our ears, open our eyes, and sense what God is telling us, what it means to be the church.
It happened. The unthinkable. The shift that showed our frailty. Nonetheless, the light shines in the darkness, and the darkness cannot overcome it. We are separated. We are isolated. And in this world, we have trouble. Nonetheless, we take heart because Jesus has overcome the world. We are conflicted and frustrated, weary too. But nonetheless, those who trust in the Lord will find new strength. We are down but not out, sidelined but still in the game. We fight for our families, we hold on to love, we strive for kindness, but the hard times get harder. Nonetheless, we are more than conquerors through Him who loves us. We walk through adversity. We are sons and daughters of the Most High. We know to whom we belong, and we know where our hope lies. For He is the first and the last, the Alpha and Omega, the one who is and the one who is to come. It looks bleak, they say it's grim, there's a lot to fear, but nonetheless, we are strong. We are courageous. We are the church.
A couple years ago, I went to Sylvan Beach. Maybe you've been there yourself. You know, it's one of Central New York's or New York State's hottest amusement parks in the area. And I usually don't ride all the rides. Usually we go and play games. We play some skee ball, play some games with the family. But for some reason, I think my brother was along with me this day. We decided to get on a ride. This ride is a big metal tube, and it begins to spin, and the floor drops out, and you're kind of sticking against the wall. I believe the name of it's called the Rotor Ride. You can see a picture of it here. Really, this picture really is ultimately a picture taken from a physics site to show the physics of how you stick to the wall. But let me tell you something. As I got off the ride, I began to get sick. Now, I wasn't the only one. There was another one, a little kid that was on the ride, and I look over, he's actually throwing up. But I was nauseous for the next 2 to 3 hours. I was dizzy, my head hurt. You know, I had the feeling like I was going to throw up at times. I was kind of swaying back and forth. And this really is a definition of nausea. It's motion sickness or dizziness or migraine. It can even come on, or having the feeling of being faint or vomiting or can't focus. And maybe for you, maybe you've experienced vertigo, and you know the feeling that I'm talking about. Well, I want to talk to us today about how we can have a nauseous faith, where we have things happen in life, and maybe we're dizzy. Maybe it feels like things are spinning out of control. Maybe we can't focus. Or maybe it's that we feel like we need to vomit. You know, there's really two things that I see that send us into a nauseous faith or give us nausea. And that's politics and crisis. Politics and crisis. And put them both together, and we see here. You know, often in life we've become jaded, we've become maybe cynical, or maybe we've become hurt by these things. And so it's with our faith, because of the political realm and because of crisis situations or disaster situations happening around us, we get sick. You know, maybe it's we can't focus on where we're called to focus with our faith. Maybe it's things are just kind of spinning out of control and you're not sure which direction to go in life. Or maybe with the idea of vomit is that, you know, you say things about people that you shouldn't be saying. Or maybe you spew things out with your fingers on a keyboard that you shouldn't be saying in the realms of politics, especially when crisis comes in. That's our outside influence today, is this idea of really politics, but also, along with that, coupled crisis. We're going to see today a remedy. We're going to see from the book of 1 Peter that Peter gives us a remedy. And the remedy is going to look something like this. It's going to be context plus calling plus response equals a different result. You know, we don't want to be nauseous as we live life. We don't have a nauseous faith where we feel sick to our stomach, we're not focused, we're vomiting. We want a faith that is focused. And so we're going to look at these lights through the book of 1 Peter of what this really looks like. To give us a remedy so we don't have a nauseous faith. But we're going to see how we can have a different response than maybe what the outside influence is on our life, and we respond like the world. Let's go and let's look at context first. Well, let's start out with a big picture of context. From Genesis 3, we know that the context of this world is fallen, it's broken, and it's evil. You know, oftentimes we just think, well, you know, if only this happens or only this person gets into office, you know, things will get better. But this world is broken. It's sinful. You know, we can look at it from the perspective of something that was beautiful, that was twisted a little bit, and now it's broken. And so that's a context that we all fall into. We all fall into a world that is broken, a world that's hurting, and a world where things just don't go right. In the book of 1 Peter, the believers were facing persecution. That was their context. Emperor Nero blamed Christians for the destruction of their city through a fire that spread throughout the whole thing. And the Christians were persecuted. They lost their jobs. They're on the outskirts of society. Maybe they didn't have food, and they were marginalized. And they had issue with their families. And they really went to the point of Emperor Nero was so cruel that he would take Christians and he would have big dinner parties. And he would light them on fire, and he'd use the Christians as candlelights for the candlelight dinners he was having. Man, that was their context. Can you imagine how sick to your stomach you would feel if you thought you were next? Could you imagine how you couldn't focus in that environment of the politics of Emperor Nero and the crisis that Christians were facing in that time? I don't know about you, but I wouldn't be able to focus. Let's look at our context this morning. Politics and coronavirus, or politics and COVID-19. In this season of life that we're in right now, whether maybe you side on politics, maybe you side more on the coronavirus, or maybe kind of all together, what are you focusing on? What is it that you're focusing on? You know, if we go the way of a nauseous faith, it's hard to focus, or we can't focus. What are you focusing on in this season? A great way to realize that maybe would be just even go back through your Facebook timeline and see what is it that you have, what are you posting? Maybe when you sit down at night and you reflect on, you know, what is it that I'm thinking about? You know, our context drives us sometimes to where our focus is. To go to the next step to get to our remedy, though, we understand our context. Broken world, or we're going to look in 1 Peter this morning, what the Christians were facing, or we can look at our context this morning of where we're at. But in light of the context, we need to look to see how we are called. And we're going to see how Peter tells the believers in 1 Peter how they were called as Christians. You see a couple of them right here. He begins his book out by saying this in 1 Peter 1. He says this, I am writing to God's chosen people who are living as foreigners. So he calls them foreigners. 1 Peter 1:17 says this, so you must live in reverent fear of him during your time here as temporary residents. And so for the first two here, he says you're foreigners or you're aliens or you're temporary residents or you're sojourners, that as believers in Jesus, you're just passing through this earth. Your calling is not to fit into this world. Your calling is of one of a heavenly citizen. That friends that Peter was writing to, You know what? Emperor Nero is coming to get you, but don't see your calling as part of this world. You don't belong to this world. You're passing through this world. Later on in 1 Peter 2, he says to them, but you are not like that, talking of people who are living a certain way. He says this about the believers, for you are a chosen people. You are a royal priest, a holy nation, God's very own possession. Pretty powerful to see the call the believers had on their lives in 1 Peter in light of what they're facing with Emperor Nero. We're in a battle. We're in a battle, and the enemy wants to do everything he can to take us off of our faith. He wants to distract us. He wants to tell us, you know what? This is more important right now. He wants to destroy things in our life. He wants to have us live lives that are depressing. He wants to detour us or discourage us in our lives. And oftentimes, again, he's trying to turn our focus off of where we need to be and put it upon something else. What is your calling this morning? Well, when we realize our call, we see how it ties into what we're focused on, but ultimately it ties into our context. I want to share you a story this morning about King Henry III of Bavaria. King Henry III grew tired of court life and the pressures of being a monarch. He made application to a man named Prior Richard at a local monastery, asking to be accepted as a contemplative and to spend the rest of his life in the monastery. Your Majesty, said Prior Richard, do you understand that the pledge here is one of obedience? That will be hard because you have been a king. I understand, said Henry. The rest of my life I will be obedient to you as Christ leads you. Then I will tell you what to do, said Prior Richard. Go back to your throne, serve faithfully in the place where God has put you. When King Henry died, a statement was written. It said this on his tombstone. The king learned to rule by being obedient. Oftentimes we're tired about where we're living. We're sick of the brokenness. We're sick of the things that are taking place around us. We look at things in politics like the Christians did with Emperor Nero, and we're like, can you believe that this person is doing this? Or can you believe this person is running for office or leading, and whatever it may be? Or can you believe this is happening around me? But you're here because God has called you to be here in this generation, in this time, to be a royal priesthood, to be a holy nation, to live as a temporary resident. But oftentimes, our focus is in the wrong place. We're so focused on the brokenness around us that we aren't living out our call here as believers. Let's go on here. As I said, it was this idea of context plus call plus response. And so we see here where Peter is giving them, hey, friends, you're temporary residents. You don't belong here. And in 1 Peter 2, verse 13 through 14, it says this, for the Lord's sake, submit to all human authority, whether the king as head of state or the officials he has appointed, for the king has sent them to punish those who do wrong. He uses this word here to submit to all human authority. You might be sitting here thinking about our context this morning, and you're saying, how could I ever submit to someone like that? But again, we have to go back to our call. We're not of this world. We're a royal priesthood. We are God's chosen people. In other parts of Peter, he calls them to be holy. He tells them to be careful how they live. He tells them to keep away from worldly desires. So Peter, in their context, he was telling them this is how you respond based off your call. You respond by submitting. It doesn't mean you have to agree with, but you come underneath and you respect and you lift up the authorities over top of you. You might not agree with everything that they do, but as a foreigner or temporary resident, you come underneath them and respect and lift them up. One of the ways we do that often, again, is through a nauseous faith, is we spew out vomit against people in higher levels of authority we don't care for. And we do it thinking that we're almost doing it in the name of God or doing it for a great reason. But let's go back to our call. Has God called you in this season of life to respond a certain way that you are? And so we've looked at focus, and now we're looking at response. How are you responding right now to the times and days around us? Peter gives them a clear response here to submit and come up underneath the authority. Honor them, lift them up. Man, can we honor without agreeing with someone? Well, if we can live out our calling, we can. Here's the result, though. Let's check out this result. It is God's will that your honorable lives should silence those ignorant people who make foolish accusations against you. For you are free, yet you are God's slaves. So don't use your freedom as an excuse to do evil. Here's the result. He says if we understand our context, if we understand our call, if we respond in a right way, here is the result. Is that when people see our lives, they will have nothing bad to say against us. When our enemies see our lives, they will speak good things against us. You know, lately I've actually seen on social media how people are watching believers and the believers' response to what's taking place around us right now, to our current context or current situation. I know specifically of someone who pointed out Christians as the way that they were responding in a certain way to what was taking place around us. We are being watched. And the result of that situation was not good because the person had something negative to say. Now, again, I understand people aren't going to always say good things about believers. I get that. But the person had a direct right to do so because the believer's response was just wrong. And I'm not even talking about anything. It's nothing that even happened here at Rome Alliance. It was something that was far off, but something I observed through social media. How are you responding? Our response will determine the result. And the result is that we would live such honorable lives that when other people see us, even though they make accusations, they would say nothing bad about us. I find it fascinating that right before this passage in 1 Peter 2, we see it all kind of pushed together here in this idea of call, response, and result. He says this to them, 1 Peter 2, starting in verse 11. Dear friends, I warn you as temporary residents and foreigners. There's the call on their life. Keep away from worldly desires that wage war against your very souls. Be careful how you live. Be careful to live properly among your unbelieving neighbors. Then, if they accuse you of doing wrong, they will see your honorable behavior and they will give honor to God when he judges the world. Today, when people look at your life as a believer in Jesus, what are they saying about it? As people look at your response to what's happening right now in politics, what do they say about your life? As people look at what your response is to the coronavirus situation, what do unbelievers have to say about your life? What do they have to say? Again, as we leave here this morning, I want to focus on our calling. Our calling is this, that we are God's chosen people, living as foreigners. He says this in 1 Peter 1:17, to live in reverent fear of him as our time here is temporary residence. 1 Peter 2:9 says, you are not like that, for you are a chosen people, a royal priests, a holy nation, God's very own possession. And so with what's swirling around us in terms of politics, in terms of crisis, with the coronavirus taking place, what's our faith look like? Do you have a nauseous faith that we're just dizzy, we're not focused, we're unfocused, we're out of control, we're vomiting through our words or through our keyboards, we're off on tangents in places we don't need to be, or are we living out the remedy, which ultimately is the gospel? The gospel is, the context of the gospel is that Jesus broke into this broken world to untwist the things that were twisted for wrong, and to twist them back into the way the Father has intended for them. He's come to rescue us so that we don't have to live the type of life where these things like Emperor Nero gets us all into a tizzy and we lose control, we say bad things, we do things we shouldn't do. Jesus came to continue to set us free so we can live out our calling here on earth. Let us not have a nauseous faith. Rather, let us have the type of results that we have when we live and we walk out the gospel. It is that when other people see our lives, they will only say honorable things about us by the way we live. As we close here this morning, we're going to close how we've closed the last couple weeks. Some of these very questions that I've posed today, I'm going to leave them on your screen for you again to either dialogue with people sitting, whoever you're sitting with today. Maybe for you to write down and journal and then think about later. Maybe for you to pray through or just to reflect on. As we look at this idea of the outside influence of politics, now add to that a crisis, what is our response? And going from that, what is the result you're seeing around us?